Okay, wonderful.
Welcome.
Brett, thank you for joining us. Just need you kind of to unmute. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. So now we're beginning our kind of interviews with lieutenant gubernatorial candidates. My wonderful co-interviewer Zayda and I will be rotating, asking questions, kind of a set of questions, same for kind of all of the candidates. To start off, can you just tell? And you'll have 15 minutes, so keep that in mind when thinking about the length of different answers. But to start out, tell us a little bit of who you are and why you're running.
So my name is Bret Bero, and I'm running for a reason. I believe that COVID has now moved from being a pandemic to it is now endemic to our lives. And consequently, I think Massachusetts is at an inflection point. I think we need to build a new foundation for living and working in a post-COVID environment. And so I think that I bring a different set of experiences to the table, distinctly different from the other candidates. I've been a small business leader. I've owned a small business in Massachusetts for over 20 years, so I understand the challenges of creating economic revitalization. I am on the faculty at Babson College, and my wife is an occupational therapist in one of the Metro West school districts, so I understand the challenge for educational stability and excellence of keeping the schools open, but the classrooms safe for both the teachers and the students. And I served on the largest environmental testing company in North America for the better part of a decade. So I also know the importance of addressing climate change and the opportunity, the unique opportunity for being a leader in alternative energy sources if we can introduce environmentally responsible legislation and policies and programs. My parents, my kids, and my grandkids all live in Massachusetts, so I do have an understanding of what it takes for a range of different families to live and work in Massachusetts. And while others will talk to you about their experience at the highest levels of government, I'm proud to say that I worked at the lowest level of government, serving as an appointed official on the Town of Carlisle Finance Committee, helping address the services delivered locally. And so for all of those reasons, if you believe, as I do, that it benefits the ticket to have complementary skills and experience rather than duplicative experiences, then I would hope that you would consider me for lieutenant governor. And that's why I'm running, because I believe that I can help make the ticket stronger. And I really got involved for two key reasons. First is because of the unique situation that we confront the challenges, primarily, as I said, the in economic revitalization, education stability, and environmental responsibility. And because I think that it's time for us to start to make a difference. There's a lot of people that have sat on the sidelines, but after January 6th, the insurrection attempt that's there, I think it's important to get involved. And so, although I'm 63 and therefore late to the political world, by the same token, I felt a calling because I didn't feel like I could sit on the sidelines. And I appreciate the fact that the Democratic Party has been open to people like me joining it, because I think expanding the tent is a worthwhile exercise. So that's an overview, and let me just turn it right back to you. Happy to answer any questions you have on any topics.
Great. Thanks so much, Bret. Nice, very nice meeting you, and great intro. On that point, I did a lot of work during the pandemic. I'm a community organizer in the Malden area around the COVID response. I joined a bunch of neighbors to try and keep the diversity and our community together. So my question to you is around COVID-19. How would you evaluate the state's response to the pandemic, and what would you have done differently, and how can you ensure that we'll be better prepared for the next crisis?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm going to give us a grade that has two components. We started poorly, but we finished strong. Here's why we started poorly. And I will caveat by saying, look, it was unprecedented, right? You have to go back to 1918 to us having a similar situation. So in fairness, I don't think anybody started great, but we did a whole host of things wrong. First, in developing the website for where you would go to get vaccines, we developed it with an out-of-state software company when this state is geared towards software companies. So that made no sense at all. It was not a good relational database where you enter it once and you can go anywhere. We didn't do a good job of getting distribution locally. My parents, who are in their late 80s, live on the Cape. And I had to send my sister down to drive them 2 hours up to Wayland to get a vaccination because that was the only place they could get one. That just makes no sense to me. So I think that was a problem. I think we had a problem in how we rolled it out to the schools. I don't understand how teachers aren't considered first responders in a sense, or equivalent. I mean, I recognize they're not first responders, equivalent to first responders because of the number of people they're coming in contact with. And if you want to keep the schools open, which I think we do, but safely, then why wouldn't you make the teachers an early up on the vaccination? So I thought that didn't make sense. I think the nature of the rollout was poor. It was not uniform. There were certain areas that got more support sooner than other areas. And I think that, is not strong. Now, I will say this, though, to the credit of the state, it did learn, and it ended up at the end, this is one of the better states at doing it. Having said all that, the final thing I would say about it is, if you only view it from the medical perspective, which, as we just talked about, had pluses and minuses, you're also missing a bigger part of the picture, which is there was massive economic destruction from the pandemic. Now, nobody caused it, so I'm not blaming anybody. It was a uncontrollable virus that started. But we didn't do a good job of responding economically to it also. Small businesses, which are 45% of our economy in this state, were devastated. And we could have done a much better job on that. I'll pause because I know you got a whole bunch of to talk about that all day. But so let me stop.
Great. Well, thank you. So the next question is going to talk a little bit about kind of the role of the lieutenant governor itself. And so I have two different parts to this. One is, how would you describe kind of the role of the lieutenant governor and what role the office can play in helping to advance progressive policies in the state? And then to drill down to one specific function of the office, the lieutenant governor chairs the governor's council. And so, although often overlooked, the governor's council plays an important role in judicial confirmations, parole board confirmations, and pardons and commutations. And what are the priorities and perspectives you'd bring to that part of the job?
Yeah, sure. So let me answer the second one first, and then I'll answer the first one second. So for flipping that around on you. Mm-hmm. So look, I think that the role of the only formal role of the lieutenant governor in the council, governor's council, in picking judicial appointments and paroles and things of that nature. I think the important thing is to not only consider the skills and the expertise and the background of the person, but also the environment. So I'm a product of first generation parents that went to college, right? And put themselves through. And my orientation is, it's important to have the people in the communities that you're from that bring different perspectives to the table. And so I think when we talk about the governor's council, but more importantly, the role that it plays, the role is ensuring appropriate diversity so that we do have the diversity. All too often you'll get, a candidate or two candidates, and they're not really distinctly different from anybody else. They are replicas of what we've had before. I think it's incumbent, even if you can't agree on who it is, to have candidates of a diversity and be very transparent in who you're considering and why you're considering it so that decision can be made. Mm-hmm. I can answer more on that later, but I want to get to the other piece that you answered, which is what's the role of the lieutenant governor? Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's a glitch, but it's a feature that it has no formal role. Therefore, you can define it in a way that it adds the most value. Mm-hmm. The last couple lieutenant governors have focused on working with their local communities, and I think that's great. But I think we're in a unique situation. And the unique situation is that our small business economy, particularly in our forgotten towns and our gateway cities, were absolutely destroyed by COVID. And we need somebody who understands how to do economic revitalization for those communities. Now, I will also say, I don't think one size fits all. The needs of businesses on Cape Cod, which is very seasonal, versus startups in, say, Cambridge, which have technology or life science, have different needs, versus where I was from. My business was from Orange and Athol, right? They need manufacturing, and they're not near large centers, et cetera. So there's different needs from different locations. And I think the role of the lieutenant governor is not to lead from the State House. It's to lead from the front lines. It's getting out in those communities, working with their leadership, the elected town officials, the appointed officials, and also the leaders in the business community. And I'm talking about small business because, like I said, 45% of our economy and 99% of the companies in Massachusetts, working with them to create businesses that create jobs. Because at the end of the day, creating entrepreneurship in small businesses is a great social program because they hire locally, they buy from other local businesses, and they reinvest in their community. And if we really want to get equality in life, the best way to do that is to promote entrepreneurship in communities of colors and other disadvantaged areas. And so I would view my job as lieutenant governor being out in the field, if you will, working with the communities and those leaders to help create economic growth and frankly, economic equality in all our communities.
Great, thank you. So you said you come to politics late in life. So I'm gonna ask the question, but I'm gonna give you a little help. Who are your political role models or your role models in general, if you don't have a political role model?
Oh, no, I absolutely do. You could actually see the little thing insignia on my wall there. I married my high school girlfriend, and she needle pointed me the presidential seal for my high school graduation, and that is it. So it is.
Oh, wow.
It is still there. So yeah. So when I was a kid, there was a very popular thing in education, which was a lot of free time. So I would go to the library and read John Kennedy's press conferences. They actually had a transcript, and so I grew up, believing in the concept of what John and Robert Kennedy espoused, which, the best slogan was, we go to the moon not because it's easy, because it's hard. It pushes our talents and it pushes our skills. So, and I liked the values and the ideals that they stood for and their pragmatic approach to getting there. Having said all that, I would tell you that the president that I think is most applicable to our current situation was Theodore Roosevelt, because he navigated us through moving from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy. And he was known, we forget it, I recognize he's not much studied now. He was known as the great regulator. He put in a lot of the policies and programs to ensure things like our food was safe and our working conditions were safe. And I believe that as we evolve past, we've already gone from industrial to information, but as we go past the information age into this new age, whatever it will eventually be called, whether it's the experience economy, whatever it is, because we talk about the gig economy and things like that, I believe that we fundamentally need somebody who's got the knowledge and experience to help us navigate that, because we can't go into it in just a reactive mode. I think government has a role for helping us get the values that we want defined. And, I think if you actually went back to a president that navigated that, I think he did a great job. And I recognize it's ancient history. Most people don't know it, but he is also one of the guys that I like to think of as kind of an idealized leader for us.
Thank you. No, that's great.
And I do recognize, because they're from a different era, there's other issues. I saw recently, and I agreed with it, that his statue was just removed from the Museum of Natural History in New York. And I agree with that for the reasons that it was done. It was a different era, but I still think his regulation piece was good. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No worries.
No.
Kind of which governors or lieutenant governors, either kind of in Massachusetts' past or in other states right now, do you admire? And what would you seek to emulate about them, or which policy ideas of theirs would you want to introduce or build upon?
Yeah, so I'm going to say that I think that the sort of leader that I have been in my life and the sort of leaders I admire are transformative leaders. They are not caretakers. They're not somebody coming in just for 4 years or 8 years and staying in the position to do whatever so that they can tee up something else. I like people that come in with an explicit objective of making the world better. I think in Massachusetts, the only transformative governor that has been there during my lifetime as an adult, which I'm going to wind back to the late 70s, frankly, was Michael Dukakis. I think Michael Dukakis actually was pretty innovative in a lot of the things that he did. I know we had the Massachusetts Miracle under his tenure. I know, like everybody, he had strengths and weaknesses. Nobody's perfect. But I like a lot of what he did and how he did it. I always tell the story that when I was in high school, my dad was working in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, at a company that I don't think exists anymore, but Simon Saw and Steel, a very mature industry. And I made him take me to Michael Dukakis speaking out there when I was in high school, so I could hear him speak as he was running for re-election. And, I just thought he was a guy that cared passionately, but was willing to promote new ways of doing things. And I think that's what we need going into as I talk about this transformative time, as we move into a post-COVID world where COVID's endemic to our lives.
Yeah, thank you. Next question. Name one word that people who work with you would describe you, and one word that people who work for you would describe you as.
Yeah, sure. Transformative is the word that I would use. I know it's an awkward word, but as a leader, what I did was come in. I was a lot like an ER doctor. I would come in after a company was very, very sick, stabilize the company, and then turn it over to somebody else to grow it out. So kind of like an ER doctor, a patient comes in that's not doing well, you just stabilize them, right? But in doing that, you have to transform the company a little bit. And so I view myself as a transformative leader. I think the people that would work for me would say, if I can make it 3 words, I would say, first, I listen to them because I'm not arrogant enough to think that I have all the answers. I don't. The people who are working on the front lines have better knowledge of it than I do. So I go and I listen. The second thing I do is I tend to be thoughtful. I try to think about it. And then the final, if I had to say a word, I'm direct, but I'm frank in the sense that I'm not going to lie to you, because the job that I'm trying to do, I need to win your hearts and minds and support. And if I lie, you're not going to believe anything I say, but I'm not going to sugarcoat either. I'm going to tell you why we're doing it, what we need to do, and how we need to do it based on learning from that. And so, it's direct, but it's fair. And I think that's what people would say. So it's more than a word. I'm sorry, but that's how I would describe it.
And thank you. And to close, say, after you talk with a voter, how would you want them to describe you in 1 sentence?
I would say innovative. I would like to say that when they come up with, when after they've talked to me, they walk away saying, here's a guy who's not just going down the laundry list and the checklist of phrases and programs that have been there. Here's a guy who's actually trying to think deeply about what the problem is and create different ways of solving it. The best example I can give, and I'll keep it to just a sentence, is I believe in public-private partnerships. There's an institution in Scotland called Scottish Enterprises that helps small businesses get started and hire people over there. And I fundamentally believe that's a role that I can play here. And I think you do that by listening and learning from people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if people want to learn more about your campaign, where should they go?
So and I can throw it in the chat. My website is bretbero.com, and Diana just threw it in there, so you can see it right there.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, and good luck. Hope to see you on the campaign trail.
Thank you very much.